My Gavan and Melanine, and well met indeed. I'm Arachir Galadirthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome to the top 10 human archers in Divide and Conquer as of today, version 3. Version 3 is not released as of today, but this is recorded and the stats are taken from version 3. Now, some caveats this time in regards in comparison to the Elven video. I've taken some comments on board and done the following. Every archer unit present here, their armor stat, defense skill, and shield have been removed from the stat table. Additionally, I've not taken into account their melee attack damage or their morale. This is a test purely of their ability at range and to kill enemy units from afar. It is not their survivability should they be shot, nor is it their ability should they come into melee. So I removed all of those as after feedback in the Elven video, which has given me some considerably interesting results. And of course I will go through the top 10 with a few honourable mentions, and then at the very end I will also then show you my spreadsheet of stats and where everybody lined up. Because when armour was a factor, the score and total was utterly different, completely different, from the final product. And it's really very interesting, I personally think. So. But this time it is purely on their ability to do damage at range. The unique test, like last time, was by sending one unit of this archer that's to be tested against Uruks from Mordor. I had to swap to Mordor because Gondor are actually involved. So, and you can't have Medieval 2 doesn't let the same nation attack itself. So I couldn't use my Gondor infantry. So it was the archer unit versus a standard unit of Mordor Uruks, and it was how many they could kill by the time the Uruks engaged them in melee. I ran this test 3 times, took the average, job done. And that was the biggest factor in their positioning. But then obviously the other factors such as range, armor damage, the amount of men in the battalion, or women, hint hint, nudge nudge, the number of missiles was also a big factor, and of course their accuracy. And then finally, if they had any attributes. As with all of the top 10s before this, this does not look at their campaign stats at all. So their cost, the amount of time it takes to recruit them, how long it takes into the game to get them, none of that applies. This is purely their battle stats. Right, so without any further ado, let's dive right in with number 10. Kicking us off then are Dol Amroth's finest, the Nimrodel Mariners, because I'll be damned if Dol Amroth doesn't make every single one of these lists. But of course they used to be Rangers, but now they are just Dol Amroth's mainstream archers. They are not elites, hence why they're number 10. Their size, much like many of the archers on this list, is 125 men, and their main attack, their arrow damage is 5, which is a lower end on the list. 180 meter range, 28 missiles, but their accuracy was the lowest of all those within the list. Joint bottom, sorry, many of them have the lowest accuracy of, so they're joint bottom in terms of accuracy. There are only 3 tiers of accuracy within the list, and most on the list have the lowest one. Only a few are the very most accurate. In terms of the kills, they averaged 86 kills by the time the Uruks arrived at them, so plomping them firmly at the bottom and propping up the list. But damn, do they look good as they're firing away with their shielded arms as well. I quite like the little shield on the arm, but there we are. Nimrodel Mariners, number 10. I should warn you that most of the rangers within the game are going to make this list, and number 9, of course, no exception, Anduin Foresters, who are, of course, the Anduin Vale's own ranger unit. Much like unlike the Nimrodel Mariners, sorry, they have the lowest number of men in the entire list at 87.5, which of course is, I think it rounds down to 87. But their missile damage is joint highest on the list of 7, which helps bump them up. And their range is 220, which is what puts them just above the Mariners, whose range, of course, was lower at 180. The Anduin Foresters have 32 missiles, which is the second highest, which again gives them a big boost. Their accuracy is the second tier, which is another reason why they're above Nimrodel Mariners. And in the testing, they killed 72 on average of the Uruks by the time they arrived in melee. So the reason the Foresters are quite low down, as I'm sure you can imagine, is because of their low numbers. So whilst they are damned fine archers, hence they make the list, they don't have enough men to get the punch that the other battalions do have. So that's why at number 9 is the Anduin Vale's Foresters. I was very pleased to see this unit on the list, and it is Gundabad's own, the Black Shield Archers. A formidable little unit, and I'm really pleased to see that the orcs actually do make the list. So it's not all humans, it is just not elves. Black Shield Archers have 125 men in their battalion, which gives them a nice boost, an extra 25. The most common size here is 100 men. They have 6 ranged damage, which puts them at the second highest on the list. The list is populated with the damage between 5 and 7, so again, there's only 3 tiers. But their range is 200, so a little bit under the Rangers, who have 220, but still a stonkingly good range. Missiles of 32, again, second highest on the list, with 36 being the highest. But and their accuracy, though, is the 3rd tier, of course, because they are orcs. They would never be as good as human rangers in terms of damage. They only killed 74 in the unique tests, which really is on the lower end, but the size of their unit and the fact that they've got quite a good range for a non-ranger boosts them up a little and puts them a little higher. I made sure that the listing is not entirely 100% based on that specific test, because of course there are other factors like how many arrows they have, can they fire for longer than other units, things like that. And of course the Black Shield Archers having more men means the more battalions of Black Shield Archers you have, the better and better and better they come. So, which is true of all archers, but of course they're increasing by 25 men every time. So that's why at number 8 is the Black Shield Archers. Now these gentlemen very nearly didn't make the list, because until I took away the melee damage, they were firmly bottom of the 16 archers I tested to provide this top 10. But by taking away melee damage, they jumped up all the way to 7th, which is where we find the Temple Marksmen of Mordor. Of course, they are Dark Númenóreans, so they have Númenórean archer heritage, and it gives them a big boost. They have 100 men again, so very common to this list, 100 men. They have the highest range damage, or shared highest range damage, of 7. They have 170 meter range, which really does let them down. It means other archers can get a full volley off before the Temple Marksman can engage them if you're in an archer-to-archer duel. They have 24 missiles, which is massively on the lower end, and a big reason why they were coming up bottom quite a lot. For example, the highest number of missiles on this list is 36, and they've got 24, so considerably lower, which doesn't do them any favours. Their accuracy is also in the 3rd tier, unfortunately, dropping them down again, but despite all of that, they killed 107 on average of the Uruks, which is the 3rd highest kill tally. But of course, because they have so few arrows, it really lets them down, and whilst they may well do well initially, they will run out of arrows faster than other archers, and that is why they are firmly sort of middling at number 7. Temple Marksmen, the Dark Númenóreans of Durthang and Mordor. The Rangers come back into the list now with Dale and Dorwinian's Athala Rangers. Again, like almost all Rangers, they have 100 men in their battalion. They have the tier 2 in terms of damage with 6 arrow damage. They, unlike other Rangers though, have an incredible range, which is why they are featuring slightly higher. In fact, they have the highest range on this entire list at 240 meters, which is damned fantastic. They have 32 missiles, the 2nd highest again, of course, because they are Rangers, which gives them a nice boost. And their accuracy is 2nd tier, so they're a little bit more accurate than many that have come before on the list thus far. They killed 80 in the unique test, which is very, very good, up there with the best of them. Not quite the best of them, though. There are a few 90s and there are a few above 100, but 80 is solid, very solid indeed. And that is what gives them position number 6, primarily because of their range and large number of missiles, meaning that if you've got someone to cover them and keep the enemy engaged, they can fire from very far away and keep raining down on the enemy from a position of safety. And that is why I boosted them up in the list a little to number 6, the Athala Rangers of Rovanion. So we break into the top 5 then, and a unit that I'm really quite pleased to see there because I think that visually they look amazing, and that is the Osgiliath Veterans. As you can see on the screen in both of their forms of armour if you've upgraded them at the blacksmith. They have 125 men, which is a big reason why they're higher up on the list. More men is always a big boost in terms of units here. They're the last unit though on this list to have anything other than 100 men. But they have the 2nd highest damage of 6, so tier 2 on the damage. They have a range of 190 meters, so a little bit under that of other human rangers because of course they aren't rangers. They are an excellent dedicated all-rounder. That doesn't really make sense, but they're phenomenal archers, as proven that they're taking the 5th spot here, but they're also fantastic in melee, which of course was not factored in, but it is something just to bear in mind in the back of your head. They have 30 missiles, so again, a solid number, but a little bit under what most human archers have of 32. Their accuracy is 2nd tier, and they killed 82 in the unique tests. 99, sorry, they killed 99 in the unique test. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong column. And actually their accuracy is 3rd tier, sorry, again, wrong column. So 99 kills being the 4th highest, a big factor in what has boosted them up the list so far. But also, they look damn good, don't they? But that's not why they're higher up. But do note that the unupgraded version has, their shields have wear and tear and marks and scratches, and I think that's an excellent little addition. But anyway, Osgiliath veterans at number 5, firmly deserving of a top 5 spot. Not wholly unexpected that they would occupy a top slot. At number 4 are the Dunedain Rangers, men of the West, and formidable archers. Dunedain Rangers have 100 men, as I say, everything left has 100 men. They have the joint highest attack of 7. They have the 2nd highest range of 220 because they are human rangers. They have 32 missiles, which again is the 2nd highest of all missiles. They have accuracy of tier 2, so again, 2nd highest accuracy. And in the kills, they got 82 on average of the Uruks. So again, putting them in the, I think that's maybe the 5th or something like that in terms of top kills. But of course, with their 220 meter range, the highest damage with their arrows of, or joint highest on the whole list, 32 missiles, meaning they can fire for a very long time. The Dunedain Rangers are firmly deserving of that spot, in my opinion. And the 3 that beat them are all for a clear and obvious reason. Otherwise, there's a strong candidacy for Dunedain Rangers to be the joint best. And of course, there's only one thing about each of the 3 units above these that places them better than Dunedain Rangers. But and we'll see that in just a moment. But at number 4, Dunedain Rangers, men of the West. I am sure that many of you are now staring at the screen aghast, thinking how could they possibly be 3rd? But they are. And we'll explain why in a moment. But 3rd are the Dunedain Steel Bowmen, who many, including myself, thought would absolutely walk this list. But they don't. But the Dunedain Steel Bowmen have 100 men in their battalion. Again, joint highest damage of 7. Their range is 180, so not as good as the other ranger units. Quite considerably worse, actually, about 30 meters worse. So again, other rangers are getting a full volley off before the Steel Bowmen even start firing. They have 24 missiles, so nothing particularly amazing. But their accuracy is 3rd tier. I'll keep that in mind. In the unique test, they killed 100 of the enemy Uruks by the time they engaged them in melee, which is the 3rd highest kill tally, after the Temple Marksman and the unit that came next in the list. Which is going to throw everyone, I think. I don't think anyone is going to think this unit is there, but if you did, before we get to number 2, if when you see it you think, that's what I thought it was going to be, and you didn't cheat, pop a comment down, because I'd love to know if anybody thought this unit was going to do as well as it did, because I certainly didn't. But anyway, at number 3, the unit that arguably should have been first, and in 2, if all of the stats are taken into account, they were first, many on the on paper. But anyway, number 3, Dunedain Steel Bowmen. Of course, they are armor-piercing, which is something I should have mentioned a little bit ago. And that is why they've done so well, because their stats are actually fairly average, but it's the armor-piercing that made them so much better. And keep that in mind. Number 3, Dunedain Steel Bowmen. Did you guess it? Because I certainly bloody didn't. The Hearth Guard of Dale, firmly taking 2nd place, and I mean firmly. No other unit got as many kills as the Hearth Guard at 124. The Hearthguard were phenomenally good in that testing, and the reason they clinch the Dunedain Steel Bowmen is one little aspect. They have 2nd tier accuracy and the Steel Bowmen have 3rd. That is the reason they did better. Otherwise, they are arguably worse units than the Steel Bowmen. They have the same number of men, 100. They have the same highest damage of 7. They have a 10 meter shorter range of 170. They have the same missiles as the Steel Bowmen of 24 arrows each, but again, they're also armor piercing, of course, with the black arrows that I'm making a big deal out of in the recording before you. But it's the second tier archers' accuracy that really elevated them and gave them the second spot. I was really, really surprised and pleased that something other than the Steel Bowman, and indeed something other than the Dunedain, actually made it into the top 3. And so I was very pleased with their placement, very pleased indeed. So there we are, at number 2, Hearthguard of Dale. So before we dive into number 1, it's a different location of this bit than before. We'll give off, of course, a few honourable mentions, and we'll start off with Baruthiel's Rangers. So the only Ranger unit, the one of 2 Ranger units that did not make the top 10, the other one being the Foresters of Haleth from Enedwaith. But Baruthiel's Rangers didn't quite clinch the top spot because you may recall we diversified all of the Rangers and we made Baruthiel's Rangers better in melee than all of their other counterparts. And that is why, unfortunately, as an actual Ranger unit, they fall down with their comrades. And they had the second lowest kill tally, or third lowest kill tally, of every unit I tested. So not really owning that top spot. And a second honourable mention goes to the Hashari Shadows. Now at the beginning I made allusion to the fact that you shouldn't call all of these units men, and it's because the Hashari Shadows are of course women. But they didn't quite claim the 10th, the list. They made it firmly into 11th, hence why these 2 are the honourable mentions. Hashari Shadows dropping off because their missiles are down at 24, their range is down at 190. Now they do have the highest, joint highest attack stat of 7, but in the unique testing they only got 80 kills, the same as the Athala Rangers, but overall they just didn't unfortunately claim anything grander than any of the units above them. The units above them all had another stat that was better or got more kills, so that's why they just didn't clinch it. Specifically, the difference between them and the Nimrodale Mariners is that the Mariners have 25 extra men. Even though they have 2 less attack damage, they also have 4 more missiles. So they just kind of balance out. They could well have been 10th. It was very close between Nimrodale, Hashari and Baruthiel. But they didn't make it, and so they remain an honourable mention. And now let us jump to number 1. Put your guesses in, post your comments down below. What do you think it's going to be? So we come to number 1. A unit that I did think would do well, but I was quite surprised at how well they actually ended up doing. And here we see them in action against perhaps their bitterest of foes, and perhaps action that has made them almost world famous, shall we say. And it is of course because Gondor's absolute finest are the Ithilien Rangers. And here they are, acting as much we know them against a column of Harad. Now, the Ithilien Rangers, of course, are a human ranger unit, so there's a few things that boost them up. They have 220 meter range. They've got 6 attack damage, which is actually second tier. That obviously 7 was the highest. They had 100 men, as I already said. Their accuracy, though, was the only one on this list that was first tier. They are the most accurate of every unit I've spoken of thus far, and they are the most accurate of units I didn't even speak of, if you see in the spreadsheet at the end. Furthermore, they also have more missiles than anyone else. You've obviously heard me mention throughout this video that the highest number of missiles was 36, and only one unit had that, and it was the Ithilien Rangers. So their unique test, they averaged 89 kills, which granted is 30 less than the Hearthguard, but they can fire not 3 times as long, a third as long as the Hearthguard. So the Hearthguard have 24 missiles, Ithilien Rangers have 36, meaning they can fire much, much longer than the Hearthguard. So the Hearthguard may get a lot of kills initially, but of course the Hearthguard have a lower range and they have less arrows. So whilst they do high damage with their arrows, they have to get close to the enemy, have to flirt with the enemy in order to actually shoot them. The Ithilien Rangers can hang back and fire throughout almost the entire battle, and that is what puts them at number 1. And the accuracy is, it's difficult to really express accuracy well, but of course the longer the battle goes on, the more pivotal accuracy will become. Hearthguard, who I've mentioned now many times, I'm going to say that word so you're going to think of it in your nightmares, but the Hearthguard, of course, have only second tier accuracy, so even though their arrows are really damaging and armor piercing to boot, they miss a lot. The Ithilien Rangers do not miss very often. The only units that have better accuracy than Ithilien Rangers are elite Elven archers. They are a phenomenal unit, and that is why they firmly claim number 1, the best non-Elven archer in Divide and Conquer when looking at purely battle stats and purely as an archer. are the Rangers of Ithilien, Faramir's own and Gondor's finest. So before we go, there is just enough time to show you, of course, the statistics of all the units as laid out in my little graph, and showing you where all the totals are, and specifically which units I actually tested to work out who was going to be in the top 10. So at the moment they are arranged in the order that I obviously is finalised on and settled on, and so you can see Ithilien Rangers, Hearthguard, Stalebowmen, etc. Stat rank number 1 is the ranking that they would have had if everything had been taken into consideration. So this ranking is if you also factor in all of their armor stats or defensive stats, and their morale and their melee damage. And you can see that in that regard, the Steel Bowmen take the top spot, Hearthguard are unchanged, and the Marksmen jump right up to number 3. But perhaps the biggest difference from the overall final is that if everything is taken into consideration, the Angmarim Darkblades are in the top 10. And not only that, they're 5th. Whereas by the end of it, they were 16th when you took all of the other stuff out. But then coming on to the next one, stat rank number 2 was the units with all of their armor stats removed. So this is, they still had their melee and they still had their morale. And in that case, the Steel Bowmen were still number 1. But this time, Darkblade jumped to 2nd because their morale and their melee damage are so high. So they featured so highly. You can see Black Shield Archers taking 3rd, Baruthiel's Rangers taking 4th, because as I already mentioned, Baruthiel's Rangers are an excellent melee ranger unit, which is why they feature so highly. Ithilien Rangers still claiming relatively near the top in all except the overall. But big differences there in the top 5 when you consider that. And then finally, stat rank number 3 was when I'd then taken out everything. Stat rank number 1 was everything considered, stat rank 2 was with armor taken out, and then 3 was with melee and morale taken out. But stat rank 3 was before the unique tests were added. So this is what on paper the stats would have been had we not done an actual battle test. And Ithilien Rangers again came top actually, which is quite interesting. But then under this scheme, as you can see, all 5 of the top are ranger units. The only ranger to not make it into the top was Enedwar Talath, who throughout the entire process remained solidly near the bottom at 14/13. But on paper, the Rangers are the best archers until you actually then fight a battle, because unfortunately I can't represent armor piercing very well in this statistic setup, and that's why of course the Steel Bowmen and Hearthguard jump so much higher, and other units you may not have thought of jump so much higher because they then suddenly actually show you they can kill things, and that on paper is wrong, or that paper is wrong. Statistically they are worse than they actually are, if that makes sense. And so that's how we ended up with the list we've ended with. You will also note that I also tested the Sworn Archers of the Dunedain, the Loknarim of Rune, and of course I've already mentioned the Dark Blades. But none of those really claiming any, they all got the worst. Those are in fact the 3 worst kills in the unique test. I thought the Loknarim would do a lot better because of their Fire Arrow, which has the ability to insta-kill units no matter their armor level, which is really quite useful. And so I suppose if I'd fought against a very heavily armoured unit, the Loknarim might have been higher, and the Steel Bowmen and Hearthguard may well have clinched the top spot. But because Uruks are not inherently well armoured, it probably reflected poorly on the Loknarim. So they dropped way down and were out of the list. But anyway, there we are. So that is it. Top 10 non-elven archers with an orc unit sneaking its way in there. Otherwise, they are all human. And the best ones are all Dunedain descendants or Númenórean sons. But there we are. For now, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. I do hope you are sticking with and enjoying the channel as we merge now closer and closer to version 3. But until we speak again, dear friends, it's been an honour to have been serving you for these past 2.5 years, and I hope you're still enjoying it as much as I am. But until we speak again, Navarnaden Perimad Melonin, and farewell.